and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast. I'm not even going to give out a number because I've got it wrong on the last two podcasts. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. We're just off of the heels of the Super Blog team up, and now we are going to be talking The Witcher, House of Glass, issues 1 through 5 here this evening on the Source Material Comics Podcast. Mark Radulich, why are we talking about The Witcher tonight?
Because we're going to be talking about the series later on this week.
Okay, all right. So this
Netflix series.
Yeah, that's the Netflix series starring Henry Cavill, right?
Yes, sir.
So this series right here, first issue hits shelves March 19th, 2014. All right, written by Paul Tobin, art by Joe Querio is what we're going to go with. Joe Querio, Querio. Then we have colors by Carlos Badia. All right. Mark, we're talking about The Witcher. Do you have any familiarity of this character?
I have not read the novels nor played the games.
Okay.
This is my first experience with this particular IP.
Okay. All right. Same here. I know mostly from, oh my goodness, it was a year or so ago when I first heard of the game. Didn't know anything about the property. I never played the game. I just heard about it. And so let's go ahead and I want to run down a little bit of an education for our listeners and myself and you as to where this property came from. Just like you said, this was a book series. It was a series of fantasy novels and short stories written by Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski. The series revolves around the titular Witcher, Geralt of Rivia. In Sapkowski's works, Witchers are beast hunters who develop supernatural abilities at a young age to battle wild beasts and monsters. Now, this is all straight from the wiki here. The Witcher short stories, first published in Polish science fiction and fantasy magazine Fantastica, beginning in the mid-1980s. The first short story, Wiedźmin, was written for a contest held by the magazine and won third place. Now, as for The Witcher in film, there was a film titled The Hexer, which came out. It's the title of a 2001 film and a 2002 TV series, both directed by Marek Brodsky and Michael Zabrowski, who played Geralt in both. In several interviews, Sapkowski criticized the screen adaptations. All right, this is what he says. I can answer only with a single word, an obscene, albeit a short one. Guess he didn't think too highly of it. In 2015, Platige Image planned an American film adaptation of the novel series to arrive in 2017. In May of 2017, though, they announced that they would be producing the Witcher TV series in cooperation with Netflix and Sean Daniel Company. All right, so there's your book and film, a little bit of book and film history there. Now let's talk about the video game, because this is where I'm like, okay, this is where I get a little bit interested. In 1996 and 1997, so this is about 10 years, decade after the first story hits, a Witcher video game was being developed by Metropolis Software in Poland, but it was canceled. The game's director, Adrian C., former People Can Fly co-owner and creative director, who coined the translation. So this guy coined the translation, The Witcher, during its development. In 2003, Polish video game developer CD Projekt, which, if you remember correctly, that's on the bottom of the issues. CD Projekt Red negotiated with Sapkowski for the rights to The Witcher, given the languishing work at Metropolis, and released The Witcher, a role-playing game based on the saga, in October 2007 for PC. A console version, The Witcher, Rise of the White Wolf, with the same story and a different engine and combat system, was scheduled for release in fall of 2009, but got canceled that spring. Then we have The Witcher Crimson Tale, which was a mobile phone action game in November of 2007. After that was The Witcher Versus, which was a Flash-based multiplayer fighting browser game developed for CD Projekt Red and released in 2008. Then we have The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings, which is the sequel to the first one. CD Projekt Red announced The Witcher Battle Arena for mobile devices on July 1st of 2014. Then comes The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which was released on May 19th, 2015. Now it has become considered one of the greatest games of all time, shipping over 10 million copies by March of 2016. And by March of 2018, the series as a whole had sold over 33 million copies. Geralt also appeared as a guest character in the 2018 fighting game Soul Calibur 6. So, Mark, you remember who I talked about there at the beginning, the guy that brought this all together, a guy by the name Andrzej Sapkowski, right? All right. So, like I said, Witcher 3 sells 33 million copies, and guess who comes a knocking on CD Projekt's door? Andrei Sapkowski sent notice to CD Projekt demanding he be remunerated for sales of the Witcher video games, asking for more than about $15 million US, representing between about 5% and 15% of the game's revenues over the years. So Sapkowski says he had originally provided the license to CD Projekt based on a lump sum payment, but now believes he is due more since the series has become much more successful than expected. CD Projekt stated that while they had met all obligations on the initial acquisition of the license, they will work amicably with Sapkowski's legal representatives to come to a fair outcome for all parties. By February of 2019, CD Projekt worked out a settlement agreement that would provide Sapkowski additional royalties for the video game series, though not as great as those Sapkowski had asked for, as to maintain a working relationship with the author for future Witcher projects. The settlement was finalized by December of 2019, so that's very recent news for the Witcher franchise. Yeah, the Witcher property, I remember just recently hearing anybody who brought up The Witcher, oh, but have you read the books? You know, of course, you gotta refer to the source material. Everything's based on source material. So they were, you know, that was one thing I'd heard when people were talking about this video game, that, hey, you need to check out the books as well that this is based off of. Of course, I think that a lot of that talk really amped up as Netflix released their TV series, which apparently has gotten some decent reviews. I've heard middling. Me and the wife tried to watch the first episode. We kind of liked it, but it wasn't all for her. A little bit gory. Well, let's talk about, before we get into the book, the character Geralt of Rivia. I'm going to read again straight from the wiki here to kind of give you an idea who this character is. Geralt, the central character, is a Witcher. Shortly after being born, Geralt's mother, Vicenna, gave him away to undergo training and eventually become a Witcher at Kaer Morhen, the stronghold of the Witcher School of the Wolf. Geralt survived numerous mutations, which is a word I think that's mentioned in the book a couple times. Survived numerous mutations during the trial of the grasses, thanks to which he gained particularly superhuman physical and mental abilities with minimal side effects. From the arduous training of Witchers, he learned the handling of many weapons and became ambidextrous. He resisted the changes brought on by the trial of the grasses better than most, which encouraged his makers to perform even more dangerous experimental procedures on him, making him lose all body pigmentation. Because of his pale skin and white hair, he is known in the Elder Speech as Gwynbleidd, close to the Welsh translation of Blade Gwyn, the White Wolf. Despite his name, Geralt does not come from Rivia. Young Witchers were encouraged to make up surnames for themselves by Master Vesemir to make their names sound more trustworthy. After completing his Witcher training, he received his Wolf Medallion, all right? So I don't think I mentioned this in the synopsis, but there is, you know, a central part of the book is this medallion that he has, the feelings that apparently it can give him. Like, it can, if there's danger, it's kind of like a spider sense almost. If there's a monster around, it kind of gives him this sensation.
When he bites into a York peppermint patty.
I have the sensation that I'm flying through the Alps. Yes, he received his wolf medallion and embarked into the world on his horse called Plotka, literally roach. He gave the same name to every horse he owned to become Roach. That's right. That comes up in the book as well. Not in my synopsis, but it is in the book. But then he becomes a monster slayer for hire. So there you go. There is a background on the property itself. All right, so I'm throwing in the synopsis for the comic right here. While traveling across the countryside, Geralt runs into a hunter by the name of Jacob Ornstein. After Geralt saves his life from a drowner, the two share a meal where Jacob reveals what led him to this place and why the figure of his dead wife, Marta, watches them from afar. He says that some vampire-like creatures called Bruxae attacked him and turned his wife, and since that time she has silently followed him, keeping her distance. Geralt and Jacob decide to travel together, and their journey takes them to the Black Forest. Here they run into a leathery grave hag who poses no danger, only to feast on the dead, and a Leshen who had been turning the woods around since they entered, so that the pair could not escape. Luckily, some songbirds, a sign that accompanies Marta, leads them to a house in the middle of the woods with curious, magical stained glass windows. Within the house, Geralt and Jacob are still seeing Marta, but unable to communicate other than by following certain signs. Geralt meets a succubus by the name of Vara, who explains the house is cursed and she has not been able to escape since she arrived with a bunch of soldiers. Curious, Geralt asks her where the men are, and she leads them to a cellar where the men have been turned into ghouls. Escaping and bolting the cellar, Geralt meets up with Vara and Jacob. Jacob tells the story of how he and his wife Marta met, and she nearly died at the hands of a sea monster. Jacob resolves to find his wife and leaves Vara and Geralt alone. As Vara and Geralt make their way outside of the house, Vara tells him that Jacob's story about his wife does not add up, as Bruxae do not turn others as he describes. When bells from the house begin to toll, the two race back to see Jacob sitting silently at a table with Marta. As Vara and Geralt sit down, they have an awkward dinner, and after Geralt shares a story, they look up and see Marta gone. Jacob goes to find her as Vara and Geralt go off to other parts of the house. When they next meet up with Jacob, he is trying to take a horse and leave, angry that Marta still will not speak to him or come near. By the end of issue 4, Geralt has calmed Jacob down and re-enters the house, finding a stairway to a 4th floor that no one knew was there. While Jacob stays behind, fearing what is up there, Geralt runs into Marta, where the true story of her death is revealed. Marta was sold into marriage to Jacob, where he was abusive and possessive. When she was sent to a blacksmith with material for a sword, she fell in love with Talton. When Jacob found out about what was going on, he killed Talton, taking Marta back home. However, he became obsessed that Marta was a Bruxa, draining his manhood, and that drove him to kill her. But prior to dying, Marta cursed Jacob for everything he had done to her, and then, after she died, she appeared at the House of Glass, using what power she could to try and draw Jacob there. Marta then attempts to pay the Witcher to kill Jacob, but Geralt refuses. When Geralt confronts him, Jacob unleashes the ghouls from the cellar and attempts to run. Once outside, Geralt tells Jacob he is not going to kill him and turns his back to leave. That's when the songbirds begin to attack him, driving him into the skeletal totems of the Leshen. And as Jacob screams for his life, Marta takes comfort knowing that his bones will be wind chimes, and skin will be breeches, and teeth a necklace. It was a pretty dark, scary kind of a tale here. We don't learn exactly everything that I just ran down there about the Witcher, but we learn a little bit about kind of what he does. We just kind of throw it into that. So what are your thoughts, man? What do you think about what happened here in House of Glass?
First of all, let me say that I really liked the story. It was a very simple, straightforward story. There's a guy, he's fishing, another guy comes up to him, and neither one of them particularly want to be alone. It's a dangerous world, and it's better to travel in pairs. Great. And they're like, well, I was going this way. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through this haunted forest, because on the other side is where I need to be, and I don't want to go around because that's going to take too long. All right? I'm with you so far. Okay. And they get there, and they find a haunted house. One of the guys is like, you know what? I feel my wife's presence here. The ghost of my wife. She's in here somewhere, and she's calling me, and I'm not leaving till I find her. Okay. And then this whore comes out.
The succubus.
And then the succubus comes out, and she's a fun character. She's just like, look, I'm trapped here. There's nowhere for me to go. I can't defend myself. Amuse me. Pull your cock out. Do something.
Mm-hmm. And she was cool.
Yeah. And then, there's some mysteries. There's some danger. It's very cinematic in the way that it's presented. I don't think you're going to get like a full movie out of this, but this is definitely like an hour of television at best. A short story. An episode, I should say.
Absolutely.
And then along the way, some clues start dropping. You, the audience, start to see what the Witcher already suspected, which is Jacob, who...
There's something... Yeah, initially you're like...
funny about him.
Yeah, there's something going on. What's going on with this dude? Because, right at the beginning, I think in the first issue, we realize Marta, which is his wife, she's watching just silently on the hill while these guys are sitting down having a meal. And obviously the Witcher's kind of like got his eyebrow raised because he, number one, is getting some kind of input from the medallion around his neck. I think it's at that time Jacob kind of explains, well, yeah, that's my wife. She's dead. I think he says, no, she's a vampire, which is a Bruxae, I think is what they call them, or Bruxa. But she's just kind of, she hangs out there. She doesn't talk to me, and that's about it. But then like you said, as they get into the woods and then they find the house, and then it seems like these signs are kind of leading them to the house. Jacob, of course, wants to follow because he feels like his wife is trying to communicate with him. But yes, there's definitely something off. Just kind of, obviously that's the first weird thing that you find out. But then as the story progresses, you start to find out that Jacob's a little bit more full of shit than what we originally thought.
A couple of things I liked about this. One, the story gives the setting time to breathe. It gives you, the audience, time to kind of take it all in. This isn't a roller coaster ride through a haunted house. like if you look at things from a cinematic, from a television point of view, there's establishing shots. There's moments where the camera is still and you're able to take in the atmosphere, and it isn't just things running at the screen going boogie 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 boogie. And so the horror elements of the story, I thought, were able to breathe and work better, and really, like, as gross as some of the imagery was, I was still interested in what those. They weren't just like horror monster elements. They were part of the story, like the hag, who I feel like should have her own OnlyFans page. How is the hag not selling videos online? Really? Someone start the hag like Twitter.
Oh man.
Good old saggy boobs. Fantastic.
Leathery breasts.
Yes. Which is the name of my sex tape. No, I mean, like, stuff like that, And here's the thing. You never get the perspective. The audience is kind of watching the action. You don't really get a sense of, like, the way that the comic is done. You don't really get a sense of what is the Witcher thinking. There's no thought bubbles in this. It's all dialogue. Mm-hmm. So you're left with. So you're just there kind of, like, passively watching. You're watching from a third-person perspective, right?
Yeah.
And you learn things as the characters learn things. And so you have the situation where, like, the succubus takes him in the basement and then, like, makes a run for it. He's like, "You're trying to kill me." He's like, "No, I was running for my life. I thought you were behind me, you big, strong man, you."
Yeah. So
there's a lot of, like, fake outs where you think the succubus is, like, why she been in this house for so long? What's her game plan here? What's she really after?
You should never. I mean, I don't know about the succubi in the Witcher world, but I would assume that if they're the succubi of legend, they're not really to be trusted. But I would have thought that, okay, yeah, she's going to screw this guy, and then she's going to, like, drain his power, which it's mentioned at one point. He says something like, "I feel as drained," like right after, they get it on in the tub or whatever. He's like, "I feel as drained as a rat," and then he stops in the middle of the sentence, and he's putting his boots on. Of course, that's when we run out to Jacob. But, so, yeah, there's this succubus there who I didn't trust at the beginning, and when she led him to the basement, I was like, "Oh, okay, well, jig's up here. No wonder what she's doing, because you can't trust them, man. You just can't. That's not. They're demons right. Anyway."
And then she's like, "No, I was in danger, and I thought you were behind me." And so you, as the reader, are like, "I don't trust you, succubi." Jesse Starcher says you're all shit.
That's right.
But as the story unfolds, you're trying to essentially the story's about what is the secret of this house? What's going on here?
Yes.
And along the way, it's like, well, where's this guy's dead wife? And along the way, you're like, what's the succubus's real plan here? What's her real story? Mm-hmm. And things start to unfold. And what you realize is you get two different perceptions of the same story. You get Jacob's side of the story, which is, a monster ate my wife. And then you get the wife's side of the story when she finally tells the Witcher what's going on. And he says, "Hi, I knew there was something suspicious about old Jacob the whole time. I just didn't know what it was. So I saw this tale to its natural conclusion to find the truth behind the lies that this guy was telling." And then he feeds him to the scarecrow.
The lesson.
Yes.
The lesson that's out there. You talked about how at the end she reveals to the Witcher what actually happened, and then she begs. Like, we find out that Jacob is he's a shitheel. He raped his wife, drove her. She was sold into marriage, and then of course she finds another love in the blacksmith in town. They're going at it for like 3 weeks. Jacob finds out about it, kills the blacksmith, and then takes her home. And then I don't know how much longer after that, but he starts to believe that she's a Bruxa, him draining his manhood, which is not in a good way. Mm-hmm. She's draining his manhood, and then he kills her. At that time, after she tells him the story, Jacob is obviously, to put it simply, a monster. And Marta begs Geralt.
Hang on, you're missing a critical element here. More than just being a rapist, he's also a murderer. This woman found love elsewhere outside of the home, and not only did he kill the lover, but then he became like a paranoid crazy person and just started killing like random men that he decided she was sleeping with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he killed all kinds of people in his paranoia.
That's right. And then when she has like access to all this treasure there at the house, she's like offers to pay the Witcher to go kill Jacob. He's like, I don't kill humans. And I was like, oh, he's gonna cut this dude's head off. He doesn't do that. He walks outside, and I think there's something to say. I mean, Geralt obviously thinks this guy is, he's worthless and guilty for what he's done. He doesn't kill the guy. Geralt turns his back and walks away. I think at that time, Marta sixed the lesson on him. Actually, she sixed the songbirds on him, which have been one of the things that have been leading them down this path. Anyway, the songbirds hit him. He falls into the thing, and then the lesson comes out, basically kills him right there. The feel of the book. What's the best word that you would use to describe the feel of this book?
It's a mashup of the mystery, horror, fantasy genre.
I'd agree. There's a lot of horror elements here.
A lot of fantasy elements.
Yeah, a lot of fantasy stuff going on here. There's, the House of Glass, and I didn't really put this much into my synopsis, but you mentioned how it set up this atmosphere, it set up the settings. This house was alive almost itself, where it had this glass, the stained glass that would change. It would change to like show, I assume, part of Marta's story. Throughout the house, they would come across these stained glass, and they would be looking at these pictures trying to figure out what they meant. And it turns out it was Marta, I think, who was at least influencing the way this house would display.
Yes, she was sending messages. I like the one that said, "Up here, stupid. I need help." I like the stained glass on that one floor that said 911.
Yep. Jacob's the killer.
Yes.
First
a lot of subtle messages in the stained glass.
A lot of stuff. Give me your idea of The Witcher after reading this book. What are your thoughts on this guy?
What I like about him is that whatever weight he's carrying, whatever trauma he suffered, he isn't a scumbag in need of redemption. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like a paladin in the sense that he works by a code. Actually very similar to the Mandalorian. Ooh. You have a guy who's out in the world doing it, and he gets paid to do a thing, and that's what he's going to do. There's no malice in it. There's no... so I don't know if paladin's really the right word, because they tend to be lawful good. They are moved by glorious purpose. He is operating, again, it's that cowboy, samurai. Samurai would actually be the best term. He's got that samurai thing going for him where it's like, here's the code, here's the thing that I do, this is how I operate, these are the rules that I abide by. There's no malevolence in what he's doing, but there's no benevolence in what he's doing. He's not doing it out of the kindness of his heart. It's what he does. It's the occupation, and it's the social environment that defines him. You understand?
Yeah.
And so I like the fact that he's more of our point of view character, where he's not so much a stranger in a strange land, but he's a guy that I think the audience can be made very comfortable with very easily. He doesn't know everything, and he's not an all-powerful, god being. He's a samurai swordsman, half samurai swordsman, half magician. Mm-hmm. Going on an adventure, and he's learning, the clues to the mystery along the way.
Yeah.
And he has to figure things out, and he doesn't always have it right, and he's got a bit of a temper. But I think that's what I like about him, as opposed to the typical way these types of characters are drawn, where they're like drunken, fucking angry, traumatized jerks.
Yeah. That
need somebody else to drag them into the hero business. I much prefer this structure of a character, or, like I said, the same as the Mandalorian. I much prefer almost kind of a blank slate that you can project yourself into, and they're having to react to their environments and their circumstances. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And there's a lot of story much of the story is about love. I mean, really, it is a love story, other than the fact that there's horror elements going on. It's Jacob... I can't even say Jacob in a weird way loved his wife. I don't want to give the guy that much credit. But I mean, he was very possessive of his wife. He didn't want anybody else. So I'm sure that in some kind of warped way,
he's a typical abuser.
Yeah, and in some kind of warped way, he loved her.
Well, as a man can love a person, they tend to not love in the truest sense of the word. They tend to love like it's a sense of ownership. it's more of a sense of coveting something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it isn't true love. You know, love is to take a bullet for somebody. Love is to feel like you can't breathe without them. Love is to feel like if they were missing from your life, a part of you would be gone. He coveted her.
Yeah.
You know, he in his mind owned her, and then he projected a lot of his own stuff onto her, and he decided she loved him. That's a whole thing, because we started this whole conversation with, like, what did you think of The Witcher? And that's the thing. You talked about the thing that you're gravitating to, I'm sensing, is some of the romantic elements of this. And again, this is that sort of a monk sort of a thing where, you know, he can't marry, he can't take on a true love, so he doesn't necessarily get too attached to people.
Yeah, we're talking Geralt.
But he doesn't mind sticking his dick in a succubi every once in a while. And really, who doesn't?
I mean, Vera's her name. Vara, I can't remember how I pronounced her name in the synopsis. She, you know, kind of needles him a little bit and asks the Witcher about loving somebody. And I love how at the end, you know, after all this crap's done, you know, Jacob gets his just desserts. Geralt looks at her and says, hey, you know, I've got another horse here. Why don't we go until we get tired of each other? Which is perfect. How, you know, right then and there, you just set up the boundary of that relationship, or at least how it could possibly end, you know, until we get tired of each other. How about we just ride off into the sunset with each other? She didn't go along. Do you have any idea why she didn't go? Was she bound to that house or something? Or what's your thoughts on that?
I got the sense she sort of projected into the future and was like, yeah, at some point I'm going to get left in a tavern.
She's a succubus. That's the thing.
I think she preferred if I'm in the house and passerbys come through and I bang them and then that's it and then they go, you know, good enough.
She's fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it was kind of a weird thing. Like, I was like, oh, she's a succubus. I mean, she's going to ride out with you and then she's going to end up banging some other dude. That's kind of like her thing.
There was no future with The Witcher.
No, there wasn't. I can't tell if he felt something for her or not. I would assume that he did, because he wouldn't have offered. You know, if it was just, you know, one and done, all right, I'll see you later.
Well, I mean, look how quickly he bonds with Jacob. I mean, granted, he's got the magic telling him something's afoot here, but I think he longs for some sort of companionship. I mean, he's out there killing monsters and, you know, and traveling the open road. We are social beings. And that's, again, another thing I like about him. It's like, nobody follow me. I'm too busy wallowing in self-pity. Like you see a lot of these characters tend to be. He's like, no, you know, I kill monsters. Mm-hmm. I bang broads. I drink wine. I'm a dude. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I would like to have someone to talk to on the road trip. Which I dug. I was like, okay, that all makes sense to me. I actually, like I said, I think he's an honorable and fun character. And I was rooting for him. Like, the problem with a lot of stories like this is that character tends to be somebody I don't want to root for.
Yeah.
And again, it's not a redemption story. It's him on an adventure doing a thing, and this is this particular episode of the longer adventure.
Yeah.
Which I think I much prefer. I like the way it ends. He doesn't just chop his fucking head off because he's not a murderer. He's a beast slayer. And he has a code, but he knows this guy can't. He knows this guy can't keep going on, and so it's sort of a passive, dealing with him, where he basically just backs him into the lesson.
All right, man. Well, I think we've covered everything we can talk about there for House of Glass. I don't think there's anything any other important parts really we can drag out of this. So let's go ahead. I guess we'll go ahead and get into plugs, man. This brings our discussion of The Witcher: House of Glass 2 a close. Mark Radulich.
I just want to tell everyone we're on the WTM network now. All of our podcasts go there. All the TV parties, source materials, whatever. Damn You Hollywoods, all the boxing coverage, everything is on WTM now. If you can, wherever you are able to listen to podcasts, you'll find ours. Just put WTM in the search box and you can. So please subscribe so that you can get all of our podcasts. You don't have to go searching around or wait for me to tweet them out on Twitter or whatever. You can follow me at Mark Radulich on Twitter. Again, subscribe on any podcast app to WTM Network, and you'll get everything plus all the other stuff that's going on there, like the kickoff and video games to the max and all of that. We're a part of the family now. So Don't
That's
look
right.
for my own solo feed. You won't find it, but you'll find WTM and you'll find us all there. If you happen to be listening to us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever they're calling it these days, if you can go ahead and give us a star rating. I don't beg for 5-star ratings, but I'm not going to say give us a 1-star rating like I used to either, as antagonistic as I tend to be. Click one of them stars, and if you like the podcast, let us know. Leave a comment. For those of you who have iPhones, and I know some of you do because I've seen the stats. Just real quick, there's an option right in your app on our feed to rate and leave a comment. You don't have to do it. You can do it right from your phone. You can do it in bed. You can do it in mid jerk off. I don't care.
Oh my.
Do it in class instead of paying attention to your teacher. Do it at work instead of paying attention to your job. It doesn't, it takes a few minutes, and it would be we would really appreciate it. And if you hate the podcast, even better. Tell us how much you hate it.
Yes.
You can check us out on WTM Network, Spreaker, Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Bullhorn, Spotify. And if there's a way to interact with us, we welcome you to do so. And tell a friend. Ask them for their phone and just subscribe them to us. Don't even tell them what you're doing. That's my method, at least.
Brilliant.
I walk around, I'm like, just give me your phone.
The phenomenon of podcasts is catching on. I mean, I've heard a lot of people at work here lately talking about the podcasts that they listen to.
Yeah, it's completely oversaturated. I don't know how anyone gets any listeners at all.
I mean, there's a lot of shows out there. So, if you're listening to ours, we definitely appreciate it because there is a gluttony. So,
yeah, that's it. We've got a review coming up of The Witcher this week. That's all I'm going to promise you because God only knows. Things may have happened. Maybe they didn't happen. I'm really getting tired of listening to these a week later. Yeah, I advertised a show that didn't actually happen. So
some of my favorite stuff is actually going through my memories where I shared the schedule from like 2 years ago. And then I'm like, that show never fucking happened. That never happened. Oh, what's going on here?
We didn't do that. We did that a week later.
Yep.
So yeah, I know we're doing a review for The Witcher. That's all I can promise you. But we've got I'll tell you what has happened. We did shows for The Mandalorian. Right. We did some Star Wars comics. We did a Rise of the Skywalker review. We did reviews for The Watchmen, Doomsday Clock, the CW Arrowverse, Crisis on Infinite Earth, the actual Crisis on Infinite Earth comic.
That's right.
We did a show of all 80s Kiss music because Jesse puts the X in sex along with The Witcher.
Oh boy, do I ever.
So those are all in the archives. You can check them out. They're all on the feed. They're all fun shows. Every single one of them.
All right. Very good. Well, yeah, I really don't have much to plug. I mean, Mark kind of covered. Make sure to go to w2mnet.com and make sure to go to W2Mnet on your podcast platform. Hit subscribe and listen to all the shows that we have on there. Not much else to say. So for Mark Radulich, I am Jesse Starcher. We will catch you next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for joining us. Do not forget to subscribe to our new home by punching in W2M Network on just about any podcast platform to get all of our content into your audio feed. Also, give a like to the Radulich in Broadcasting Network and W2Mnet.com Facebook page in order to stay on top of everything that we have to offer. If you'd like to follow the Source Material Podcast on social media, just follow @SourceMattCast on Twitter, and we are on Facebook @Source Material Comics Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please feel free to share. We look forward to entertaining you again soon.
He wiped up your best, got kicked in his chest.
From the Gospel of Jacob. No man can understand a woman. Wow. Not ever. Their reasons are too mysterious, too chaotic. We must accept them for what they are. Yes, it's a shame he's a rapist.
Yeah, it's a shame he's a murderer. And then we'll shit and get, as us country folks say.
Oh, there ain't no rest for the Witcher.
Quirero, Joe Quirero.
Joe Quizno, got it.
Quiznos.
This is why we can't have these people on our podcast, by the way.
Adrian, fuck me. Camille Raz.
If you don't know it, just make it up. My understanding is that it comes from a scene where the Witcher
and Baby Yoda.
No. Don't start. Rivera?
Yeah.
Rivera.
Geraldo of Rivera. Sure enough, it's a fuckubus.
I keep waiting for you to make an Essence joke, by the way.
I'm trying to work Evanescence into it somehow, but I can't. Like, what guy had that much of an impact named Evan on that band? I didn't call them that. A rub-a-dub-dub, a succubi in the tub.
That's right. Listen, man. Girl gets in the hot tub with you. You bang that girl. It's as simple as that.
There, it's 1 + 1 = 2 in my book.
What's new, pussycat? Whoa. Do you know, Jesse, that when I do that, though, I got a 50% chance that somebody actually has a podcast app on their phone?
50% chance?
Yeah.
That's about half.
How about a sneak peek at our upcoming TV party tonight on The Witcher?
There's a scene, Jesse,
okay,
in the Witcher TV series on Netflix that we'll be reviewing this Thursday on TV Party Tonight, where he struts out on stage. You can hear "Pour Some Sugar on Me" playing in the background.
Oh man, what episode is this?
The middle one.
Oh.
And he's just twirling on the pole. No hands. No hands, Jesse Starcher.
That's worth a coin.
And someone yells out, "Toss a coin to the Witcher!" And people just start throwing coins at him as he twirls around and around and around the pole, using just his leg muscles.
They have really done something with this property. Netflix has corrupted this, because I did not expect that after reading this book.
He did a full split on the stage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He split and just ball sweat went everywhere. And they tossed more coins at the Witcher.
All right. Okay. I believe every word you're saying to me right now. I can't wait for you guys to talk about that on TV Party Tonight.
It was clearly the best part of the show.
I want you to ask Pat to just tell him to give his brutal thoughts on Ball Sweat Witcher.
I don't know if you know this or not. Did you happen to read the part in your notes where historically the Witcher put the X in sex?
Oh my goodness. No wonder Pat's a fan.
Yes.
Don't bullshit me.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Bullshit.
Shit. 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 Shit.